What if you could lead more effectively and go home on time? Welcome to the Lightbulb. I'm Zoe Thompson, leadership and performance coach, and each week I bring you 3 practical insights from my work helping impact-driven leaders transform from reactive to intentional leadership so they can finish work on time and take guilt-free time off, creating success that feels as good as it looks. Let's jump in. Welcome back. Episode 20 and the first week of March is done. It's just crazy how quickly the weeks go. It's been a good week. I spent Monday working on the business, clearing down the chunkier tasks, the ones that need more focus, the ones that help drive the momentum for the business, my ascend tasks from the AAA time framework. And then Friday, I used to wrap up some anchor tasks and any outstanding ascend tasks that need to be done. So that was Monday for me. On Tuesday, I had the alumni group call with those that have done the Elevate Your Efficiency Leadership program. And it's great to see everybody every month and check in what's working, what's not working, and help support them with implementing what they've learned on the program and also just keeping that momentum going. It's great for the accountability, knowing that they've got the call each month, they've got the support there, but also that accountability is really important as well. Had a great call on Tuesday afternoon with a national organization, very well-known organization, who have asked me to put a proposal together to do a year-long leadership program. So very excited about that. Watch this space. As soon as I get the sign off, I'll be able to share more details. But it's great that working with more organizations now with year-long programs to support leadership. And it really ties in with the way that I like to work with people. I like to have that time to help teach, but also to help coach. And the way those two work so well together, teaching frameworks, teaching methods, teaching different models, also helping people to implement them and finding ways to make it work in the day-to-day. And that's the great thing about working with people over a longer period of time, whether that is with the alumni program, whether that's with a program within an organization or even within our community. Being able to work with people over that period of time, I love being able to see that growth. I love watching them implement and keep that momentum going. And whilst the community is pay as you go, because for me, it's important to give people that flexibility. The majority stay in for longer periods because they see the benefit of being able to work on their leadership skills each month, whether that's in the group coaching call or whether that's coming along to the workshop each month, having that support with me in the day-to-day to help them become a better leader. So that's been a great start to the week, being able to see the alumni group, having a great call with that organization. Wednesday had a great podcast with Quinn Magnuson over in Canada. I was a guest on his podcast a little while ago and he wanted me to come back and pick up a few more topics. So that will be out in the next couple of weeks. And also did a resilience workshop for the Prison Officers Association. So that was good too. It's really nice to be able to pull my own experiences of working in the public sector, police service, to understand their world in the prison service and help them with the day-to-day habits and behaviors and responses to build their resilience. So that was cool. And then Thursday was back to seeing one-to-one clients. So it's been a good mix and that has brought up 3 great light bulbs to share with you. So the first one I wanted to share is the life pie problem. I'm trying to find a better way of explaining that. So this is where we want to address how big of a slice of the pie is our work when we look at our life. When we take that step back and we put our life into a pie chart, how big is work? How big is that slice of pie? Because sometimes work can take over. And sometimes, even those of us who are ambitious, even those of us who love our work, sometimes the pie kind of takes up a little bit of a bigger slice than we would like. And it just comes out of balance a little bit. Now, there isn't a perfect percentage split. Some people will be a 50-50. Some people will be 80-20 one way and some people will be 80-20 the other way. But it's a great way to look at how it is now and how you would like it to be. And this is what I did with a client this week. That we drew a big circle and looked at how big of a slice of pie work was, what else went into that pie, and then also looking at where the slice of pie of work was creeping into other elements of their life and where they were finding they were physically present but mentally absent. It's a great way to have a really clear picture of what's going on. Then we can draw the picture of what we want things to be like. And then we can start to look at what needs to be different. So it's a great way to be able to look at how things are, how we want things to be, and what we want to be different. And once we then start to talk about what we want to be different, we can start to look at how we turn those into small actions that we can do on a daily basis that we can create as non-negotiables. And also then starting to think about the structure that we want in place that's going to enable those things to happen. So the conversation that I had with the client this week was to think about 2 things that were most important to them that they wanted to create as a non-negotiable every day. And then we made it small enough so that even on their busiest days, even on the days that are really stressful, where the unexpected happens, where you're low on energy, had poor sleep, and you really don't feel like doing it, you can still show up and get it done. And so we talked about 2 things that would become their daily non-negotiables. So it doesn't have to be done in like a 1-hour window. We can look at what's important. What is it that we want to protect in terms of the boundaries that we set? What is it that we're trying to protect? And then we can look at the things that we want to be able to do that help us to show up and be our best selves. And how do we commit to that? How do we stay disciplined with that? And how do we show up to that and make that a non-negotiable? So even if work is 80% and life is 20% of everything else, and that's what you choose, that's what's good for you. Maybe it's 70-30, maybe it's 60-40, maybe it's 50-50, whatever it is for you. When you look at what you want to allocate to each of those slices, then you look at what you want to do to protect those slices. And then you're not trying to commit to everything. You're recognizing what's most important and you're thinking about what you want life to look like when you take a step back and look at that bigger picture. It's very easy for some of these things to be very all-consuming. And so this is a great way to be able to map in how it is, how you want it to be, and what needs to change to bring you into that second pie chart of what you're working towards. The second light bulb this week: why tired teams make bad decisions and the cost of sustained pressure. I picked up a little bit on this in last week's episode, but this week it's come up in a slightly different way. I was having a conversation with another leadership coach and we were talking about some of the organizations that we're working with, some of the leadership teams that we are working with. And this other coach works in a very specific industry, not an industry that I work in. So it's always interesting for us to have conversations because we get to talk about some of the leadership challenges in different industries and the industries that we don't work in to see where there is an overlap. And it was interesting that actually the challenges that we are seeing leaders face are not industry specific. And I noticed this when I work with organizations that are global. It's interesting that these are challenges across different companies, different industries, different locations across the world. And we were talking about how a lot of organizations, in particular in the industry that they work in, is relentless. There aren't really the kind of ebbs and flows that some industries get. It's a constant pressure. And once one phase of their work is completed, they are straight into the next phase. And we were talking about how over the last few years, well-being in organizations has kind of been a hot topic to a topic that is being perhaps placed more on the back burner now. Certainly post-COVID, a lot of organizations were very actively looking at well-being strategies, actively looking at how to implement well-being. Now, for a lot of industries, for a lot of companies, it's more about the day-to-day well-being. but we were talking about how actually within leadership, looking after yourself is so important, because actually it really does cascade across the team as well. So your habits, your behaviors, your level of performance will impact your team. We talked about brain fog and fatigue as, being warning signs for burnout, for being warning signs for poor well-being, but actually the impact that can have across a business is huge. And we were talking about how that strategic thinking needs recovery. We need that rest. We need that downtime to be able to think about what's happening, what has been happening, what do we need to happen. We need that headspace to be able to do that. We need to be able to have that rest and recovery time to take time out and then plan that next phase. And what we were talking about was some of the leadership teams that we're working with, and certainly that they are working with, are not allocating that downtime. They are going from one phase to the next, and it's coming through in poor decisions and that lack of strategic thinking, the lack of horizon scanning and looking ahead, thinking ahead, and being able to make those decisions that make things easier for their teams, which is then burning everybody out. Everybody is fatigued, and it just has a huge knock-on effect. And tired teams don't make sound decisions. Brain fog doesn't help that decision-making process, and it can lead to very expensive mistakes. So rest isn't a reward for performance. It's fundamental for high performance. And I know I talk about this a lot within the PIPS framework when we talk about performance, and we're talking about what you need to have in place for a high performance for you is really important. We still, as humans, have the key 3 elements to looking after our health and well-being. We need to rest, we need to sleep, we need to eat well, and we need to stay active. And we need to do things that fill the emotional well-being bucket as well. But certainly in terms of our physical health and our mental health, we have to look after ourselves. We have to take that downtime, and we have to make sure that for us as leaders, we allow that downtime in, and also for our teams, we plan in that downtime. Lightbulb 3. Let's talk about the 4 p.m. decision point. Now, most of us want to go home on time. Most of us want to be able to close everything down at the time that we said we would. What we need to do is factor something in that helps us to be able to do that. Otherwise, we know what it's like. The day runs away with us, and before we know, we've said we're going to leave at 5. And it's 5:30 before we even realize what the time is. So this was something that came up in a client session this week. And it's actually something that I've talked through with clients before. And we've talked about it before in terms of having a buffer zone. It's something I implement. I have a buffer hour at the end of each day, which gives me that opportunity to clear down any emails that have come in throughout the day, but also clear up any small admin tasks that need to be done before the end of the day. When we have a specific time where we have a decision point, then that means that we are creating a cue or a trigger to make a decision. So we want to make sure, if we're trying to create a new habit, we want to make sure that we have a cue or a trigger that makes us think about what we're doing. We want to be making conscious decisions, not just allowing things to happen. So when we create a decision point in our calendar, we get a pop-up reminder that it's time to make that decision. So let's say, for example, you're trying to go home at 5. So you want to make that decision point an hour before. When you get to that time and your pop-up pops up, then you want to be thinking about what is left to do. What's left on the priority list? What's left with your assigned tasks to do? What needs to be done in the hour that you've got left? Then you're making a very conscious choice as to how you are going to spend that last 60 minutes. That will then enable you to be able to close everything down and walk out the door on time. So creating a decision point means that you are creating a trigger to ask yourself a question and make the decision. What do I need to do today? What do I need to delay until tomorrow? And maybe what is no longer relevant that I can delete off of that list, or maybe even delegate to somebody on the team. So you're making a very conscious decision at a very specific point in the day, which then means that you have that buffer zone to be able to create any additional tasks that need to be done, any priority tasks that need to be done, and then log off on time. So this is a very short and sweet final light bulb. It's also a very practical tool that you can implement. And you can go through your calendar at the beginning of the week and look at what time you want to finish each day, what's your hard stop, and then create that reminder to pop up an hour before that time so you can make that conscious decision at that decision point and make sure that that last 60 minutes of your working day is efficient and effective and is working on the tasks that you need to get done. So very simple light bulb to finish off and a very practical step that you can implement when you're next logged back on. So those are my 3 light bulbs for this week. As always, practical things that are coming up with clients and in conversations and in workshops. Hopefully something in there for you to take away and put into action. Have a good week ahead, and I will be back again next week with another episode for you. And those are your 3 takeaways for this week. Before you go, ask yourself, what's my light bulb moment from this? And now that I know what I know, what will I do differently? Choose one action, however small, and commit to it. That's how overwhelmed and reactive becomes aligned and intentional. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next week on the next episode of The Light Bulb.